proposed bills by 35 members of the House of Representatives seeking a single term of 6 years for the president and state governors, as well as rotation of the presidency among the country's 6 geopolitical zones and rotation of the governorship among the 3 senatorial districts in the state, have been greeted with cheers by some Nigerians who are supporting the move. The group led by Ikenga Ugochinyere is also calling for the creation of offices for 2 vice presidents, one from the southern region and the other from the country's northern region. The lawmakers also proposed an amendment to the Electoral Act 2022 to ensure that all governorship elections are held on the same day. They say these proposals will reduce the cost of governance, unite the country, and tackle nepotism and corruption in electoral processes. Joining us now is Professor Anthony Kila, a professor of strategy and development, also an Institute Director General at Commonwealth Institute for Advanced and Professional Studies, CIAPS, Lagos. Good morning, Professor Kila, and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, good to be here.
Professor Kila, well, I saw you on Sunday. It's good to see you again.
Yes, good morning.
Today, good morning. Well, very quickly, there have been so many calls. This is the latest. People proposing 2 vice presidents, a single tenure of 6 years for president and the governors. And then you also have that proposal by Mr. Akinfadahunsi, recommending a return to regional governments. Now, the problem with Nigeria, in your view, is it turning things around, changing things, or the people themselves, or leadership, as Chino Achebe told us? The operative word is restructuring. What does it mean to you? What do you think really needs to be done? Because I guess all these people making these proposals, they mean well. They want a better framework for Nigeria. But is the problem with the framework or with we, the people, called Nigerians?
Well, I think good to be here. I think it's a mix of the situation, undoubtedly. Let us, commence our analysis by understanding that the problem people are trying to solve is an index of the frailty, the fragmentation of the body of Nigeria. When Italy was formed in 1862, it was said that now we have formed Italy, we have to make Italians. We've created Nigeria, or they have created Nigeria in 1914. Nigeria has had its independence in 1960, but up to today, we have not been able to create Nigerians. The problem they're trying to resolve, of the problem of a system that is frail, fragmented, and where there is no trust. It must be said, and here you want to go to who, I don't know whether to say to blame or to link to these failures. It must be said that the failure of not being able to form a Nigeria where who rules does not matter, where the people of Nigeria actually feel Nigerians and they can see a president as just somebody doing his or her job, a governor as just somebody doing his or her job, is a failure of leadership. Because from 1960, when independence was created, to 25 years of uninterrupted democracy, we must be very clear. It is the leaders, especially the political leaders, that have not been able to create a sense of Nigerianness in people. That rather than do that, they have sought to divide along ethnic line and along religious line. It must be said, the military regime tried to unite Nigeria, but did it in a shabby way, a blatant failure in everything they did. They didn't succeed in that. But the civilians tried to exploit division rather than create unity. Now, here's the point. Where we are today is an indication by the new political class, the new political elite coming out, that they realize that the project of trying to create a nation of true Nigerians, where truly ethnic group or faith does not matter, is a failed project. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to balance the situation by saying, let us allow everybody to be in it. And you can see the good intention. But you see that intention is a frail intention. It's an intention that has no depth and does not take into consideration the original idea of democracy. It's a bit like somebody who has a child that is wetting the bed. And rather than looking at the cure, you're thinking of buying plastic mattress or getting mattress, plastic to cover the mattress. That is not the real situation. It's in the body. This idea of rotational presidency, it sounds good because it will mean that no part of Nigeria would dominate. Please follow me, viewers. The reason why people are thinking that way is there's a fear that one part of the country would dominate forever. So they say, let us allow each region to have it for once so that you're sure. But you see, what they're leaving out is this. They're leaving out the essence of democracy, which is equality, citizenship. They're leaving out the fact that if a child that was born 40 years ago, well, somebody born 40 years ago is no more a child. If a person born 40 years ago comes from one region and one person from that region gets into that rotational presidency, that 40-year-old child has to wait for 36 years before he or she can aspire for that position again. That, to me, is exclusion bettered by inclusion intention. It's a kind of generational apartheid. And we have to think it through. The way to help the country is to create a place where people will not all be rushing for the same thing. And we do not see it. Our real solution is not this rotational thing. It's not this turn-by-turn mentality that creates a kind of nepotistic, my own turn, let's get together to put our own there. It is diversity of interest and ambition. It is decentralization of power so that individuals do not need to aspire to be the same thing. This idea of everybody want to be a governor, a senator, a president is the same thing that made people want other people's wives, other people's husbands. We all want the same thing. That's a very dangerous place to be. We need to diversify our aspiration, decentralize power and process so that we do not need to be rushing for the same thing. That, for me, is the way to go.
All right. Okay, I hear you. In terms of the fact that the spirit behind this move is good, but not well thought out. Because, like you mentioned, if we go to zones, geopolitical zones, it would then boil down to, okay, it's my local government's turn. Is this tribe, they are marginalized? We'll continue to have the same conversation again and again. So what is the solution then? Because you talk about, there was an article where you're quoted as saying that it is why equality, merit, and fairness are crucial in democracy. But we currently don't have that. So what is the way? What would be your alternative? That's one question. How do we ensure that it represents across the true face of Nigeria in terms of everyone feeling included? That's one. The second is the matter of the 6-year single-term proposal. Would you agree to that? So beyond the rotational presidency, they're also saying that it should be a one-term, 6-year tenure. Do you think that's a better suggestion than this 2-term, 4 years that we currently operate?
Again, I understand the intention. I truly get the intention. The intention is good intention. They try to solve a problem. But the solution they're bringing is not, I'm not persuaded by it. And above all, it's not a true democratic situation. You see, the reason why people behave well in power is because they're accountable for whilst they're there, and they hope to be judged by their achievement the next time around. If somebody gets into power and he knows he or she's not coming back, you risk breeding a dictator, or at least somebody who knows that there's nothing you can do to him or her in terms of policy. Some viewers might think that, well, whilst they're there, you can hold them accountable because of separation of law, separation of power. That will be for criminal matters. That will be for breach of the law. But in terms of policy, and this is where politics comes in, the reason why leaders behave well, especially in their first term, is because they seek to return. Everything they know, everything they're doing, will know that it will affect their re-election. If you tell them that they have only one single term, they're likely to do as they please. The solutions we're bringing, unless we accept that we're not capable of managing democracy the way it was intended, and we then want to create something else, we need to be careful, because all these bodies, all these elements and factors that we're injecting into democratic system, it is not the way it was intended at all. And to your first question, so what do we do? Democracy was intended for a society, a system of equals, where the best are elected. I cringe when I look at Nigeria, because we seem to forget that the word elect elegere from Latin means actually throwing off the best to elect the best of the lot. There's a very important part of democracy which we seem to leave out. The idea that everybody, anybody can aspire for any position, regardless of where they come from. I want people to look at a system similar to Nigeria, at least, that you can be compared to Nigerian system, the American system. People who know me know that I tend not to make international comparison. I like to stick to Nigerian issue, but allow me this time to just notice that in the American system, people, the fact that somebody comes from the north or the south of the country really doesn't matter to anybody. Nobody talks about it at all. They're able to look and see the individual, his or her track record in detail. What they've done in their life in the private and public sector is what matters. So if we have a situation where everything is hung on, where people come from, we're in trouble. And it must be said, this agitation for zone, for religion, for region, is not something that citizens should be interested in. Unless citizens who think they will benefit if somebody from the region is there. We need to move towards a society that is based on merit, on fairness and transparency. The merit, fairness and transparency is to see that we start to decide who governs us the way we decide our doctors and our carpenters, regardless of where they come from. But to do that, and I understand, to do that, we really need to build a Nigerian nation. That is what is missing. And it doesn't have to be a nation where everybody will pretend to be the same. No, we are a union of nations. There's nothing to be ashamed of that. We need to understand that we're a diverse collective of nations, a union, that will learn to live together in a way that what matters more is the power nearest to you. If I had my way, Dr. Bati was talking about restructuring. I am not confused about restructuring means. And those who say restructuring means many things to different people, shame on them. They're just incompetent or mischievous. Restructuring, go to the dictionary, see what it means. It means to reset, it means to reconfigure. You can tell me that the idea people, the way people want to refigure it might differ, but don't say you're against restructuring because you don't know what it means. If you don't know what it means, get a dictionary, whoever you are. So, if I had my way, my idea of Nigeria, the most important power will be the local government authority, because that is the one nearest to you. The rest you just deal with vague, faraway things, not what matters in our life, not our roads, our schools, and our hospitals.
Right. Prof, I like your insight you've put forward.
Yes.
And you were quoting Massimilio Azeglio, an Italian statesman that said, we have built Italy.
Yes, indeed.
It's time to build Italians. And I like the expression of Italy you brought, because Italy was a cobbling together under a system called the Risorgimento. And they finally coupled some other parts. Gibraldi and other people fought the Sardinia kings and empires, and from the union. Risorgimento is simply about the reunification of Italy. But in the case of Nigeria,
Yes, indeed.
Nigeria has different identities spread across different lines. There are some similarities, but also Nigeria also has a dastard cocktail of selfish statesmen. A state that doesn't have statesmen is a state on its knees. How do we bring sanity to a conversation of a national dialogue where your statesmen are ethnic bigots? That's my question, sir.
Well, I think, yes, it's about information and education. It's about information and education. The reason why statesmen thrive on being bigots and dividing is that it's a shortcut to power, and we've created a whole generation of people, a whole spectrum of Nigerians whose emergence for fame and fortune is not from creating great things or providing solutions. So in this country, there are people who are rich and you can't pinpoint what exactly they produce or what value they add to the society. There are people who are called statesmen in Nigeria, whether they were in the Senate or they were governors or ministers, and you kind of think of one big thing that they have done to deserve a place in history. Yet roads are named after them and places are named after them. And you, so if you want to move away from that, you want to create a society where people actually think to say, why should this person be called honorable or distinguished or His Excellency? Why? Why should this person, why should we stand up when this person comes into the room? So if you create from our school, from our churches and our mosques, and indeed communicators like yourself, let me take that back to you quickly. If we can get the mass media to actually delve into issues and to ask ourselves, is this person worthy of that role based on his or her past and based on his present? When this person talks, can they answer questions? Do they understand what they're talking about? So that way we bring forward competence. Because yes, we're diverse, but diversity is not a problem at all. What matters is that because I'm different from you, the law should not allow me to oppress you, even if I want to. That's the key thing. We need to see our laws and constitution as the framework within which we must act. We must then create laws and constitution that truly reflect our aspirations and our fears and our concerns as a people. That's the way it should be. We should be able to know that regardless of where somebody comes from in Nigeria or how they pray, it is what is on the table that matters to us. I repeat, the way we judge our carpenters and our dentists, until we are able to judge our politicians that way, we're going to be in trouble. And who can do that? It's going to be those that can influence, from families to schools to churches and mosques and clubs and everywhere. We need a set of Nigerians that understand that the only way the country can work is if we build it on merit. And it is not true that the only way to fame and fortune is the crooked way of division or looting. We need to create a new generation of problem solvers, innovators, thinkers that can think outside the box. And then we need to then praise them, recognize them for their contributions in the society. That way, we will all be proud. You know, the only people who actually make us proud in this country at the moment, besides the singers, which people have preferences, is our sports people. And you know why? Because they win. But we also see them sweat. We see why they're winning. We see their skills, we see their grit, we see their commitment. And in that moment of the excellence of humanity, which is grit, creativity, endurance, boldness, and determination that sports people like the Warriors used to demonstrate, we're taken away in a magical way that we forget their ethnic group and their religion. And we rally around their green color and we shout up Nigeria or up Eagles. That is what we need from our leaders.
Well, Professor Kila, you just talked about local government authority, the level of government that is closest to the people. As we speak, there is a matter before the Supreme Court, taken there by the Attorney General of the Federation on financial autonomy for local councils and also, you know, the rights of local councils under Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution. What do you think we need to do? We've been on this issue of local government reform since maybe 1976. One commission, one panel, one committee after another. And yet, as we have seen, in Rivers State, and to quote the governor of Rivers, 85% of the states in Nigeria, there's still a problem with local councils, particularly in terms of their relationship with the overbearing state governments that we have. What do we need to do without prejudice to the matter before the Supreme Court?
Yeah, without prejudice to the matter of the Supreme Court. I see the law student in about the jurist in you coming out, so we need to put that aside. But generally speaking, what we need to do really are two things. Overall, I think we need to go back to the Constitution to define the role, status, powers, and function of the local government. That is a general framework. I also think we need to take away the election of the local government from state management so that they're truly independent entities. Perhaps they should be managed directly by INEC, although that said, INEC itself, you know, I've not seen any country saying they want to use INEC as an example across the world. But you know what I mean. Let's make it an independent body away from the state powers, and also ensure that in law, their independence is totally clear from state government, so that they're not dependent on state government for finance, for operation, or anything. So that we can find a way to be very clear about what their role is, what their function is, and where they derive their powers from. Knowing fully well that we've known now that the state governors are likely to want to abuse or oppress the local government authorities. The way forward is to say that let us create local governments that are totally free from state government, that can function, because, you know, they have what they're doing and they just get on with it.
Well,
All right, well, thank you very much, Professor
thank you very
Kila.
much, Professor Kila.